All right, guys. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be starting a Bob Ross style drawing. We're not going to be using paints. We're going to be using just pencil and eraser. You can actually do a lot of this just with pencil and eraser. So I'm going to show you some of the techniques and how to do some of the things in a Bob Ross style drawing today. Bob Ross does a lot of landscapes. He does a lot of mountains, trees, water, clouds, nice landscape scenes like that. So we're going to learn how to do some of those things today. So the first thing we're going to start out with is sky and water. When you're doing your sky and water, they should reflect each other. So I'm just going to use some nice shading like this. See how my lines are all nice and close together. I'm not scribbling. I'm shading very, very carefully. Lines are nice and smooth and close together. This is not clouds. What this is sky and water. So when you're doing sky and water, you have to decide where the light parts of your sky are going to be and maybe where some of the dark parts of your sky are going to be. So if you want lighter parts of your sky, just use your pencil a little bit lighter. You want darker parts, just use your pencil a little bit heavier. Another way to do that actually looks a lot better is to just layer over the same part a couple of times. So you're going to think about where you want the light parts and the dark parts of your sky. So I think I'm going to have some of the light parts of my sky maybe more towards the middle. Maybe a little bit more towards the middle. And then maybe I'll have some more darker parts of the sky over here. Because in the sky there's always lighter parts and darker parts. Perhaps there's a storm coming on, or maybe it's going to rain in a little bit. So you'll have darker parts and lighter parts of the sky. Going to make all your lines nice and smooth, going the same direction, not scribbling anywhere. Take your time. Make sure it looks nice and neat. Do a good job. Okay. Well, there's my sky, that part anyways. And so now we're going to go on to doing the water part as well. So let's look at the water here. So your water is pretty much going to match the sky. So if you had some darker parts in your sky up here, you're going to have darker parts in your water reflection as well. Okay? So my water reflection should pretty much reflect the sky. You want to make sure your lines are all nice and smooth, going the same direction, because when they are, then when you go to smudge, everything will look nice and smooth as well. So up here I have the light part of the sky comes in right here. So in the same way in the water down here, I want the light part of the sky to reflect down here as well. Okay, it's important that you do the reflection just like you see on the sky here, because later what we're going to do here is we're going to be putting in some trees, and then what you'll see is, as long as you do this the way that I showed you here, what you will see is that the sky and the water reflect pretty nicely and pretty evenly. So we want to have the sky and the water reflect each other. Okay. Pretty close. So now what you want to do is you want to come back and you want to crosshatch very lightly. So you're making nice even diagonal lines in the other direction. So if you went diagonal one way, you want to go diagonal the other way. And you want to match the same shading that you were doing before. Okay. This is called cross-hatching. If you're doing a really nice cross-hatch, then when you go to smudge, it's going to come out nice and even. Okay. And then down here on the water as well. You want to try to make your cross-hatching match your shading. I got a little bit too dark over here, but not too bad. You want to try to make it match. Nice, smooth, even lines, all go in the same direction. It'll give you a really nice smudge. Okay. So, we got this. Now what we're going to do is going to take our fingers and just start to smudge. In your sky, you want to do crisscross smudging. So you go one diagonal and then another diagonal. So one diagonal, and then we go another diagonal. Smudge everything as nice and neat as we can. So crisscross with your smudging in the sky. Do crisscross smudging in the sky. And you're going to wind up with, graphite all over your fingers, but that's fine as well. It just washes off easily. You're going to be smudging throughout the whole drawing, so it doesn't matter that much anyways. Okay, but when you do that cross-hatching, you get a nice, kind of a nice look for your sky. We'll smudge this one a little bit more over here. Then you want to go down and do the same thing on the bottom in the water. On the water, it's important too. You want to do some crisscrossing, but then you also want to do straight across, because that's going to help the water look more like it's a level, flat plane. Because later we're going to put in some water lines. So we want to go across as well. So you can do your crisscross smudging. And if you want to leave more parts of your sky light, you can do that as well if you want to. Another thing that you can do, you can always take kind of a scrap piece of paper as well, and you can just kind of crumble it up like this. And you can use this to smudge. This is just called a stomp. So we can use this to smudge as well. Let's call this a stomp. And see we're smudging with that one there. And then across. Takes some work, but if you just give it a little bit of pressure, you'll get a nice even smudge as well. Okay, I'm just going to go back up here and try to fix this a little bit. Okay, so the idea is to get as smooth as you can. All right, get nice and smooth. Our sky and our water. All right, that's first part. All right, something you can do if you want to put in some clouds, you can do this two ways. You can do it over a light part, or if you want to put in some clouds, just kind of sketch the outline of the cloud. The cloud's going to kind of go up like this a little bit. You can make your clouds any shape that you choose. Then you just kind of add in a little bit of shading to shape the cloud a little bit. Okay. So you just add in a little bit of shading to kind of shape the cloud a little. All right. And then towards the base of the cloud, wherever you want your cloud to kind of, maybe the cloud fades away into the sky. Just going to very lightly put a little bit of shading where you want the cloud to fade away. And then you're going to smudge that as well. But smudge it using kind of circular motion. And that's going to kind of give you the base of your cloud. All right. And then also you want to just lightly smudge over the outline of your cloud as well. My cloud goes up here. Okay. That's kind of how you make some clouds. You can put your clouds wherever you like. Or what you can do is you can go into one of these darker areas of the sky. You don't have to do much of the sky dark. You can leave it lighter if you want to. This is just an example, but I want to make mine dark. I can show you some things. So I'm going to put in some clouds here, just using my eraser. Now, when I use my eraser, I'm not using it heavily. Really, all I'm doing is just kind of barely touching the paper, just kind of lifting the graphite off of the paper. Okay, so I'm not really using it very hard. I'm just lifting the graphite off the paper. And when you go to make the shapes of your clouds, if you think about it, if the shape of the cloud, if it's round, we should making lines with curves, not straight lines. It kind of makes it look more 3D. So all I'm doing is just lifting that graphite off the paper, just very lightly with my pencil as well. Okay. So I'm just going to put in a few clouds here. They're kind of off in the distance. Okay. You can do some clouds that way if you like as well. All right, so I'm going to put in some mountains now. Let's see here. I'll put in some mountains. I think I'm going to have some mountains over on this side. So, we have to look at, maybe how mountains look, not how we think that they look just in our minds, but how they really look in nature. They're all not perfect triangles or anything like that. So they can have some lumps and some bumps on them when you're creating your mountains. Okay, so we're not just going to have perfect triangles for our mountains, but we are going to think about how they might look in nature. Maybe we can see a few just pictures of them, get an idea. So if our light is coming from this way, here's the light part of the sky. The light should be shining on these sides of the mountains. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use our shading to put in the dark side of the mountains first. And again, nice smooth lines all go in the same direction. Okay, so the light would be hitting over here as well, but maybe this mountain comes in front of that mountain a little bit. Okay, and the light would be falling on really kind of more on this side of the mountain. And do a little shading in this part as well. Okay, make your lines nice and smooth and even, because when you go to smudge, it'll look a lot better. Look really nice. All right, so now let me crosshatch those as well. Usually when you're doing the shading, a lot of time you should crosshatch. It just makes the shading smoother and nicer and more even. Okay, now so light shining on this side, so let's go ahead and smudge those. But you'll see like this is the edge of where the light is hitting the mountain, and it's all jagged and uneven because, you know, the rocks and canyons and boulders and things that are on this mountain are not all even. They're jagged and they're in different places and big holes in the rocks. And okay, so if you've ever been hiking or something, you know that. So we want to try to give the same effect as well. Okay, so jagged, uneven is what you're going for. Smudge this as well. Now, on this side of the mountain, though, too, there are still, there's still rocks and holes and canyons and boulders and cliffs and all kinds of things like that. So in order to make those, what we're going to do is we're just going to come back and put some shading in kind of just jagged lines. They don't all have to be connected. Some of them can be connected, but what you're showing is that there are all kinds of different things, places to climb, and maybe there's some animals living up here or something, mountain goats, bears, but there's all different kinds of rock formations and things that we're showing that we're making here. Okay, so you can kind of put those in. But those should have some space between them because they are in the light. And so we're going to smudge those lightly as well. All right. Okay. So this is making our mountains. Okay. And then we're going to come down here to the bottom. Let's say there's a whole bunch of mist at the base of these mountains. So again, we're just going to lightly shade the bottom. Notice how my lines are all going the same direction. Nice and even. Then we're going to do little circles at the base of the mountain, smudging. Okay. And that's just going to create some mist at the bottom of your mountain. Also helps hold that paper down flat. Like, see how I have two hands or two fingers here and I'm holding it down flat and tight to the table while I'm doing this. That keeps it from moving around and making mistakes. Then also you just kind of want to whisk a little bit of that shading up the side of your mountain. Okay. So now we're going to put in a tree line. We're going to put in a tree line here. And so it's going to start way off to the side. Now, when you make your tree line, make sure it goes straight across. Okay, it should go straight across because what you're doing is you're creating a tree line that's going to reflect on a lake. Okay, so let's pretend that way over here, these trees are very far off in the distance, so they're very small. So all you're doing is little make up and down lines, very, very small. But as you come across your paper, you are slowly making them bigger. All lines should fall together, nice and even. The more care that you take making sure that your lines are nice and even and go the same direction, the better your drawing is going to come out. Now, when I'm doing this as well, it's important to make sure that these trees go up and down, like straight up and down, perpendicular to this tree line, because otherwise it looks like they got caught in a hurricane and it just doesn't look right. So here, if you just make them taller slowly as they come across, then what you'll find is that it looks like they're getting closer to you. Okay. Now those, you want to just gently, lightly smudge up. Okay. All these lines are nice and even together. All right. Now we want to make our reflection. So your reflection is just making the same tree line, but you're going down into your lake or the water. So again, the lines have to go perpendicular to your tree line. And all the short trees should be reflected as short trees in the lake, and taller trees reflected taller in the lake as well. Okay. Trees are getting taller over here, and a lot taller here as well. Okay, so that's going to show your reflection. Now you also want to smudge these down, but you're only smudging very lightly, and you're only smudging the height of the trees that you want to reflect. Okay, so you're not going to smudge all the way across the paper, you're just smudging the same height of the trees that are above the tree line or above the water line. Okay, that's what we're doing there. So now we have a reflection in the lake. Next thing we're going to do, going to put in a water line. Now, when you put in a water line, it's the same idea as with these clouds. You're just lifting the graphite off the paper. You're doing it very carefully. You're not like heavy eraser and erasing really heavily. You're just doing it very, very carefully. Now, it has to go perfectly straight across, or else you're not going to get the right effect. First thing that you should do is go right along the tree line between where the trees are and where they reflect in the water. Okay. See how lightly I did that? And it has to go straight across. All right. Then where your reflections reflect further into the water, you can add a few more little ones here and there, as long as they go straight across. Don't bend them, don't go up and down. And what you're going to get is a reflection of those trees on the water. You get kind of an effect of the water here. And you don't want to do too many, but you might want to find a spot, a couple of spots where, like here, the sky is reflecting darker. Maybe I could put a line here and a line here, because if you put too many, it actually doesn't really look like the water too much. It just looks like you're erasing things. But if you just put a few here and there, and it takes some practice, but if you just put a few here or there, then what you'll begin to see is that it looks like a water reflection. All right, so another thing that we're going to do, let's put in some bushes up here in the front. Maybe there's some land right here up in the front, so we're going to put that in. So how we can do that, let's make some bushes. All we're going to do is kind of scribble some lines, kind of quickly in the shape of how you want. Maybe there's some bushes up here. It doesn't really matter how you do this, but... And actually, this part you don't have to be too careful on either. You can just scribble. Maybe there's some grass over here. Maybe there's some bushes up here. Okay? Let's do some scribbling. Okay? Then, you're going to smudge those as well. You'll still see the scribbles, but that's okay because that's what makes it look like there's sticks or grass or in these bushes here. All right. Okay. Then you can go back to these bushes. Use your eraser just like you did for the water lines. And you just lightly pull out some shapes of sticks. Okay? Just lightly pull out some shapes of sticks. All right. Then let's add a pine tree in the front here. Maybe we'll add two. So we're going to use a pine tree right here. We'll do one here, and we'll do a taller one over here. We're going to go right over our drawing. We're going to put in the trunk first. And to make this pine tree, all you're going to do is you're kind of making little jagged lines, short up and down lines that come out from the trunk of the tree. But each jagged line comes out a little bit further than the line above it. So the tree gets wider as it goes towards the bottom. Okay? And maybe this tree is actually behind these bushes here. So we're going to let them fade away. So start at the top. You only come out a little bit. Go down, little short jagged lines. And then as you go down further, each part of these branches come out a little bit further. Okay? So that's going to be, let's do this guy, bigger one here. Okay. Each one comes out a little bit further. And just short jagged lines, all kinds of pine needles and stuff on these branches, these boughs. That's what you're trying to reflect with your drawing. Okay. That takes some practice, but once you start to get the hang of it, you'll know how to do it, and it will come easier and easier and easier to you. Okay. I'll smudge these a little bit. Not a lot on these trees, it's okay, because pine trees are, they're rough and a lot of needles and spiky things and pine cones and branches, and so just a little bit. It's pretty nice. Then you can come back, see the trunk, again, just with your eraser. Just lift out a few little parts of the trunk, not all the way. Maybe we just see a few little parts and pieces of the trunk here. Peeking through the branches. And there we go. So this is our landscape that we're going to be working on. You can do the entire thing with your eraser, with your pencil, smudging with fingers. You can get some really nice artwork. This is our landscape drawing in the style of Bob Ross.